Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hare Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhadi Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhadi Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajagana Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Nandana Vrajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhadi Valabha Girivanadhadi Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhadi Janavalabha Girivanadhadi Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Nandana Vrajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajagana Ranjana Nanda Vrajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Satashishi Mahara's Divine Grace H.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sako Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Mayapur Dham Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shishi Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gora Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta. Okay, so we're continuing our reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we're at Madhya chapter 12. The cleansing of the Gandhika temple, text number 38. Huh? Yeah, it's not. We don't make an issue out of it. Okay, so we're at text 38, and we're discussing here the King Praptarudra wants to meet with Lord Chaitanya. We haven't got to cleaning the temple yet. We're getting there. Cleansing the temple. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. The cleansing of the Gandhika temple. And we're at text 38. So he was given a cloth from what Lord Chaitanya wore. And this is not the first attempt. This is a repeated attempt. And so one thing about this cleaning of the Gandhika temple, we're going to see that this is the process by how we develop a relationship with Krishna. That there's a process of cleansing, internally and externally. And this is demonstrated by this pastime. So translation, when the king received the old cloth, he began to worship it exactly as he would worship the Lord personally. Purport. This is also the conclusion of the Vedic instructions. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute truth, everything in relation to him is on the same platform. The king had great affection for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and although he did not see the Lord, he had nonetheless already attained the conclusion of devotional service. Immediately upon receiving the cloth from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the king began to worship it, accepting it as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord's clothing, bedding, slippers, and everything required as an ordinary necessity are all transformations of Sesha, Vishnu, the expansion of Sri Baladev. This cloth and other paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are but other forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything connected to the Lord is worshipful. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs us that just as Krishna is worshipful, Krishna's place, Vrindavan, is also worshipful. And as Vrindavan is worshipful, similarly, paraphernalia in Vrindavan, the trees, roads, rivers, everything is worshipful. A pure devotee sings, Jaya Jaya Vrindavan Vasi, Yata Gyana. All glories to the residents of Vrindavan. If a devotee has a staunch devotional attitude, all these conclusions will be awakened or revealed within his heart. I'm going to go up here and okay. Yashadeva para bhaktir yahadeva tata goro tashyate kahita ya artha paraksante mahat mana. Those who are great souls, who have explicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. That's from the Svetasvara Upanishad 6.23. Thus, following in the footsteps of Maharaj Prataparudra and other devotees, we should learn to worship everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is referred to by Lord Shiva as Tadiyanam. In the Padma Purana, it is said, Aran Hananam Sarvesam Vishnor Aradhanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tvadiyanam Samaram Chanam. O Devi, the most exalted system of worship is the worship of Lord Vishnu. Greater than that is the worship of Tadiya, or anything belonging to Vishnu. Free Vishnu Sat Sit Ananda Vigraha. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Similarly, the most confidential servant of Krishna, the spiritual master, and all the devotees of Vishnu are Tadiya, the Sat Sit Ananda Vigraha Guru. Vaishnavas and things used by them must be considered Tadiya and, without a doubt, worshipful by all living beings. Om Aganda Timaranda Shaganajana Shilakaya Chakshu Omli Tamyana Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, a couple of things here. This is a piece of cloth given to Lord Chaitanya, given to King Prataparudra. I've just been reading in Prabhupada Saraswati's some books that he'd done, translated by Bhanu Swami, and quite in numerous places he talked about this. His descriptions of Lord Chaitanya, and that he wore a red cloth. So sannyasis, particularly Mayavadi sannyasis, which we see like now, it's like saffron, the cloth that developed today is what it is currently. But the time of Lord Chaitanya, these sannyasis who wore this red cloth. And sometimes you see that when you go to India, you see this more of a red. Some renunciates wear that cloth. So the also, and it's a great emphasis here is presented that how worshipful these things are, and it's important to worship even the deity as like Maha. Sometimes the deity paraphernalia is, the new paraphernalia is always new jewelry is made, new outfits are made. Of course, outfits typically are not, but sometimes you see them. They're given away and worshipful. These are worshipped also. As they used to belong to the deity. Typically, when it comes to the guru, you can use the things that belong to the guru while he's on the planet. Sometimes he'll give a bead bag or something to a disciple, or sometimes a sweater. Devotees talk about it. Shruti Kirti would when he traveled as Prabhupada's servant, he really didn't carry that much with him because he was mostly carrying things that Prabhupada needed, And so sometimes Prabhupada would give him, some of his clothing. But then once the spiritual master departs, then all those things become worshipful at that point. Everything that was worn it's worshipful on a different level while he's here. Like I said, you can use it, but once he departs, then all that becomes worshipful items. You worship those as not different than the spiritual master. So, and then of course, the description here of the devotee's tadiya. There was something else in here that sparked some. I thought about when we were reading it, but this obviously we also was mentioned here that this are also considered Baladev, because all this paraphernalia, Shringasan, everything associated with the worship of Vishnu, those support items, the articles that are offered, the trays, the cups, the bowls, that's all paraphernalia in the worship are all considered Balaram. The cart, the Rath cart, when they carry the deities on Rath Yatra, that's all Balaram. All those things are considered worshipful. Okay, so we'll move on. 39. After returning from his service in South India, Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is kind of important because you see some give and take between Ramananda Roy and King Prabhupada. So there's some when he works for the king and he wants to retire from that, and he gets the permission from the king and he gladly does so. So the king, actually also is approaching Ramananda Roy. Hey, you help me, reciprocate here. I want to have the Lord Chaitanya's association. So it kind of goes a little bit back and forth here. You can see in the relationship. So it says when Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramananda Roy to make a meeting arrangement. The king told Ramananda Roy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit my meeting with him without fail. The king and Ramananda Roy returned together to Jagannath Puri, or Jagannath Kshetra Puri, and Sri Ramananda Roy met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Ramananda Roy informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. So, we're on 44. Sri Ramananda Roy was indeed a diplomatic minister of the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. Now, as we already read, we had this chapter 8 was this conversation between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya. That's chapter 8, Madhya Lila. Probably one of the most important chapters in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. As far as Sambandhana is concerned, you have chapter Madhya Lila, chapter 8, and Adi Lila, chapter 4. That tells who is Lord Chaitanya and discusses the reason why he comes. And then chapter 8, this discussion with Ramananda Roy talks about this progressive paths, the hierarchy of devotional service, from basic, work for me, just like in the Bhagavad Gita. Everything you do should be given as an offering to the Lord, And if you can't do anything else, you can work for me. So the Lord took him through all these the progressive stages, all the way up to this devotional service in the mood of the gopis. Lord Chaitanya first, and even the Varnashram system, which Lord Chaitanya kind of rejected. This is all external, and then eventually they got to devotional service of the Lord in the mood of the gopis. And then, which Lord Chaitanya liked, but then when he wanted to go higher, and then among the gopis, it was Radharani. And then that sparked his interest, and then he wanted to know the details of that relationship. So then Ramananda Roy goes even deeper into the details of the relationship with Krishna and Radharani. And he describes both Krishna in detail, and he describes Radharani in detail. And in this description, he talks about Radharani's, the mood of her love, and how it's the highest mood. And of course, she's described as the creeper that satisfies Krishna, and that all the gopis are the twigs and the flowers on that creeper. So this is all described in chapter 8. We read these things. And it also describes that to worship Krishna and Radharani, it's done with the Gayatri mantra. Ramananda Roy mentions this Gayatri mantra in these, not the whole mantra, but these two, the Klim seed, Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopichanavadabha Swaha. It's in the purport. Klim Kamanavaya Vidyahe Praspanbanaya Dhimahi. These two parts of that Gayatri mantra is how we worship Krishna in Vrindavan. So, of course, there's 5 parts the mantra, 5 different mantras in there. And then if we're fortunate enough we ever meet a Rasika devotee, we'll get another mantra. Of course, sannyasis get another mantra. They get another mantra added to their Gayatri mantra. They chant 6 mantras. We chant 5. And then if we ever have that fortunate meeting with a Rasika devotee, and one of these, and of course these are all mantras available, but they don't have no potency until they're given by the spiritual master. That's when they get potency, because he impregnates that mantra with the potency that he has. To whatever level he is at, that person, you get that potency. So in this way, we get this description from Ramananda. So the point here is Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy have a very special relationship. So to meet Lord Chaitanya, Ramananda Roy is like one of the best persons to make that relationship happen. Of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is also trying to make that happen. That's what we'll read, But it's kind of interesting that we have this, also in that, just remember that we have this trying to attain the perfection. We're way down on that list. We're not even at the Varnashram system. We're trying to, that this Brahma Bhuta stage, he mentions this, that this is even mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 18, text 54, that this is the perfectional stage. But Prabhupada talks about how Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that's for Mayavadis. For us, we keep going past this Brahma Bhuta stage. And he describes that Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about 2 categories in that for Vaishnavas. And that one is called the Sarup Ghat, and the other is called the Vastu Ghat. Now, these are extremely elevated platforms, because in the Vastu Ghat, one worships Krishna, but they still have a little tinge of material desire. Not much, but there's just a little. And Prabhupada said, as Vaishnavas, we should worship on that platform. For the Vastu Ghat, they're always living in Vrindavan. Doesn't matter where they're at. Where they're at in the material world, where they're traveling on this planet, they're always living in Vrindavan. So this Swarup Ghat is where we are asked to try to situate ourselves and worship. Now we see an example of that. We read that also in the 10th canto, where some of these gopis, when Krishna first played his flute, the first time he played his flute, they couldn't get out of the house. They were kept back. And it was described because they had that little bit still, even though they were in their Sarup, their spiritual personality, they were still held back a little bit. But that But that last little bit became purified at that point. They cleaned it up because they had a little bit of attachment to material desire. And then whatever it was completely purified. So that when Krishna played his flute, the next nights, they were able to get out and be. So that's an example of that, what's called Sarup God. So this is a little esoteric, but we see the value of the depth of what Ramananda Roy can help these Vaishnavas like this. And it's so valuable that their association, that these elevated devotees, one of the angas of bhakti, there's these 64 angas, one of the top 5 is that one should associate with advanced, like-minded devotees. Because in that situation, the ability to get most mercy will come. Because if it's like-minded, you have some type of personality traits that are compatible, but affectionate is also mentioned. Like-minded, affectionate, because then that person has some feelings towards you, then they're willing to share more often. That path is going to be opened up a lot more as far as sharing and that relationship, that bond of sharing. And ultimately what we want shared is that the mercy that they can give to help accelerate one's relationship in this process. Okay, let's read some more. We're on 45. Maharaj Prataparudra, in great anxiety, could not endure not seeing the Lord. Therefore, Ramananda Roy, by his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. Sri Ramananda Roy frankly requested, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Ramananda, you should make this request after duly considering whether it is befitting for a sannyasi to meet a king. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king. Ramananda Roy replied, my Lord, you are the supreme independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anything because you are not dependent on anyone. When Ramananda Roy addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the supreme personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, I am not the supreme personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in 3 ways, with my body, mind, and words. I mean, Ramananda Roy knows, they know who's, no, in chapter 8, right, at the end of that, Lord Chaitanya reveals himself. He saw the form of the Lord. He saw him. He's one of the few that actually saw Krishna and Radharani, and got that vision how that those two came together as Lord Chaitanya. So and often Lord Chaitanya would reveal his Vishnu form, different forms of Vishnu. So these devotees who were these Vaishnavas who had their consciousness, pure Krishna consciousness, understood. But Lord Chaitanya did not want to act on that platform. He came here to act as a devotee. He wanted to taste what it's like as a devotee to worship Krishna. What is this that Radharani's experiencing? That's what he wanted, and he didn't want to do that on the platform as a Krishna. He wanted to experience it through a Vaishnava devotee. As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like wildfire. Black spot on ink cannot be hidden on the white cloth. It is always very prominent. So we see this, even today we can see, this type of gossip can It'll be very prevalent. Ramananda Roy replied, "My dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This King Patraparuja, the king of Orissa, is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "There may be much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable." The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but simply by taking up the name king, he has infected everything. This is one of those things that, as far as management, you got, even in our society, it's when you're in management, you always have to defend. There are different aspects of being in these positions that often aren't conducive for spiritual advancement, because you got to deal with other sadhakas. Sometimes you see that where they sometimes push people away, accept them. So there's some politics that inevitably happens. And the most prevalent is this idea of defending. A king has to defend his, kingdom. He has to protect the citizens. And similarly, you see that the temple president is in the position of trying to protect the mission of Srila Prabhupada and the environment of a particular temple. So sometimes there's things that are done politically, So these things, and actually, are hindrances, because inevitably, if mistakes are made in that process, offenses are made. So it's very difficult. It's a fine line one has to walk. And ultimately, it can hold one back, even though it's service, if it's done properly. Improperly, offenses aren't devotional service. Okay, but if you're still very eager for the king to meet with me, please first bring his son to meet me. This is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the son represents the father. Therefore, the son's meeting with me would be just as good as the king's meeting me. Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 78, text 36, it is said, Atma vai putra utpana iti veda nusanam. The Vedas enjoin that one is born as his own son. The son is not different from the father. And this is admitted in every revealed scripture. In Christian theology, it is believed that Christ, the Son of God, is also God. Or in other words, that they are identical. We see this very much in the Varnashram system, this whole family life. Even now it's very strong, family life and husband and wife and children. This bond's very strong. But in the Varnashram system, it was even more strong, because your family was connected to your gota. Whatever caste you were, was in direct relationship with your family. If you were born as a Sudra, you're in that caste. Born as a Brahmin, you're in that caste. So your connection, and oftentimes, or Vaishya, or even a Kshatriya. And so your name was often associated with that, and then you have to sometimes, with evidence given of your caste system. So it's even more entangled, more strict, more, it had even more value. Now we're all outcast, the society of outcasts. Some Sudras in there, some very little Vaishyas, but primarily, especially in the Western world. The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak. Here is a great devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Maharaj Nanda. Purport. In his Anubhashya, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that a materialist mistakenly accepts the body and mind as a source of material enjoyment. In other words, a materialist accepts the bodily conception of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not regard the son of Maharaj Prataparudra with the idea that he was a materialist, being the son of a materialist. Nor did he consider himself the enjoyer. Mayavadi philosophers make a great mistake by assuming that the Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha from Bhakti Brahma Samhita, chapter 5.1, the transcendental form of the Lord is like a material body. However, there is no material contamination in transcendence, nor is there any possibility of imagining spiritually in matter. One cannot accept matter as spirit, as indicated by the technical words Bhoma, Ija Dihi. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 84, text 13. The materialistic Mayavadis imagine the form of God as matter, although according to their imagination, God is ultimately formless. This is simply mental speculation, even though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He placed himself in the position of a gopi. He also accepted the king's son directly as the son of Maharaj Nanda, Rajananda Nandanahari. This is perfect vision, according to the direction of the Vedic culture as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Pandita Samama Darshana. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 18. Such acceptance of the absolute truth, according to Vaishnava philosophy, explained in both the Mukunda Upanishad 3.2.3 and the Katha Upanishad 1.2.23 in the following words. Nayam Atma Pravachanaya Labhyo Namedhaya na Bahuna Shrutena Yam Evaisa Vrinute Tena Labhyas Tashya Isha Atma Vivrenute Tanum Svam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, or even by much learning. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. The living entity is entangled in the mirror in existence due to his lack of such spiritual vision. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung in his Kalyana Kalpatra Samsare Ashiya Prakriti Bhajya Purusha Ahimane Mari. When the living entity comes to the material world, he thinks himself the enjoyer. Thus he becomes more and more entangled. So as Prabhupada makes the quote in this verse, he said that Lord says he obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. So how do we get chosen? This is like, there's nothing we can do. There's no that obligates the Lord to bring us to Vrindavan. And that's our destination. We want to follow in the footsteps of these gopis. That's what very fortunate we are that we have this Chaitanya Charitamrita, that all these acharyas who are gopis, I was reading these books by Prabhupada Saraswati's Tungavidya. I mentioned earlier, numerous places he talked about Lord. It was an associate of Lord Chaitanya, and he read cloth for some reason. Quite a number of descriptions in these two small books I just were reading. But these are all gopis, and they're all lighting the path for us to come to the Lord. But ultimately, the Lord has to let us in. But it requires the mercy of all these devotees to get us to that point. It's rarely achieved. So what's the price we have to pay? Rupa Goswami says. He says there's one price, and that's lobhya, greed. If we have the unlimited desire, unending desire, that we're at the point we don't care what other people think about our devotional practice, that our only desire is to serve and to make Krishna happy, then with the mercy of the devotees, that hopefully we get the mercy of Krishna will let us. Godhead is huge. There's so many different forms of God that we can be worshipped. Vaikuntha is unlimited, innumerable planets is described. And it's full of spiritual planets, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead has unlimited leelas and unlimited forms that one can worship. Krishna is the source of all of them. Okay, any questions? Any comments? Yeah. The pause? Okay. Yeah. 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 So the point was being made that the cooking pots are, Apurva was talking about one time. He had a pot, he placed it on the floor in the kitchen, and he was told that, these pots are also considered paraphernalia, these cooking pots, and that they shouldn't be put on the floor. That was that point. Because it has to be also very moochy and clean. The floor is very dirty. And so when you put the paraphernalia, the Lord's paraphernalia, on a dirty, it's not. Yeah, Balaram is manifested in the pot, yeah. And then the other point you mentioned that, if you go to Vrindavan, you can go in Prabhupada's room, you can see on a lot of Prabhupada's paraphernalia there, and it's put on display, and devotees can worship. Yes, Mother Chaitanya. Yeah. 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 That's a good point. Yeah. 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 Clean. Yeah. Well, you're special. You when it comes to cooking, there's no question. No, you do have an amazing standard. Chaitanya was bringing up the point that when these pots have to be, when you finish cooking, they have to be cleaned very nicely. You have to put the time into it to make these things spotless, inside and out, because it's Balaram you're cleaning in this sense. So this is a consciousness